Know who I think the next person who's going to get held accountable is?
Who?
J.K. Rowling, dude. You hear about her?
Oh, dude.
She apparently went like full, like TERF.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw it at first, and I saw some tweet, because that's how everybody figures out their news these days.
Yeah.
And it was something like nobody dot the classic meme.
Yeah.
It was like
that's like the new classic.
Yeah, that is the new classic. It will. So it's like nobody dot or colon, whatever you want to call it, and then J.K. Rowling. I've noticed nobody's been talking about me recently, and I was like, kind of funny. And I didn't even know what the fuck they were talking about. I just thought it was funny, so I liked it, or I might have retweeted it. I don't fucking know. I thought it was funny, and then like a full day later, I decided to actually look into it and see what people are actually talking about, which again goes back to exactly what we were talking about, where people just see a hashtag or see something that like whatever, and then they just go along with it, and then it takes them like a day or two or a week to actually fucking look into it. Meanwhile, they've been presenting themselves in alignment with this thing for the full time. But yeah, what did she have, like 3 or 4 tweets that were something along the lines of like, just something along the lines of like, if
like I remember, or like something like someone who menstruates. There used to be a word for that, and then she kept spelling woman wrong.
Oh yeah, I did see that one. I'm
just
pulling it up right now.
Some weird shit, yeah. But luckily Daniel Radcliffe came out, and he supports the transgender community.
Let me see. I want to actually read these tweets real quick just to make sure we're getting it right, because I know the one you're talking about, but I feel like there was like 3 of them that were like prolific. Let me see.
To say I can pull it up too. So one of them is, people who menstruate, in quotations. I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wimpund, Womud, opinion, creating a more equal post-COVID-19 world for people who menstruate.
Well, I guess what's her whole point there is she's basically saying,
I mean, she basically like, I mean, people just break it down to her being a TERF, which is like a trans reactionary, whatever, feminist.
Trans exclusionary radical feminist.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just think she kind of falls into that. Here's another one. If sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. I thought I was reading that wrong, but it's just she's a bad writer. If sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth.
Well, I gotta be honest with you, man. That one, I kind of see what she's saying there. If I'm being real.
One. I'm just going to read the next one. Yeah. I've spent much of the last 3 years reading books, blogs, and scientific papers by trans people, medics, and gender specialists. I know exactly what the distinction is. Never assume that because someone thinks differently, they have no knowledge. Number 4.
Number 4. 4.
These are all like in quotations. Feminazi? TERF?
Oh, I'm reading this one too.
Witch? Times change. Women hate is immortal or eternal.
The idea that women like me, who've been empathetic to trans people for decades, feeling kinship because they're vulnerable in the same way as women, i.e. to male violence, hate trans people because they think sex is real and has lived consequences is a nonsense. I found that one particularly interesting because a nonsense, like you're a fucking writer, and I don't think that's like how you say that. However, I will say, I'm totally in support of you doing whatever you want to do. Trans movement, you do what the fuck you want to do. I mean this. I could not care less. And I mean that in the best way possible. But there have been like some things where I think what she's trying to get at, from the way I can read it, is that people have made a distinction between sex and gender, which I think is a fair distinction. And the whole premise behind that is that sex is your biological, what you are, a male or a female. And then gender is your social role or whatever. So, which I always thought was kind of weird in the first place, because they also say there's no inherently feminine traits or no inherently masculine traits. So then I'm like, well, then how can you identify as a male if there's no inherently? But it's like, okay, whatever, that's fine. Like I said, the classic, I have black friends, I have trans friends, and I call them he or she or whatever the fuck they want to be called, because I'm not a dick, and that's that simple. I'm just not a dick about that shit. However, there have been certain things that have popped up. For instance, the idea that if you're not willing to date a trans person, that you're transphobic. That for me, the distinction of sex.
I mean, that'd be like saying if you don't date a fat person, you're fat phobic.
Precisely. But also, what's the key word when you say heterosexual or homosexual? Would be sex. Sex. I am attracted to someone of a different sex than me because I'm a straight male. I am heterosexual. I am attracted to someone of the different sex. So it's not necessarily that I am attracted. I'm not sexually attracted to your identity. I'm sexually attracted. So if you want to change the distinction between sex and gender and say that gender is a totally different thing than sex, then you also, in my opinion, would have to acknowledge that being heterosexual, meaning I'm attracted to an opposite sex, or I'm homosexual, I'm attracted to the same sex, we're focusing on the word sex there. So for me personally, just being honest, I couldn't see myself, I'm just being real, I couldn't see myself dating a trans person, not because I'm transphobic, but just because that's just not what I'm attracted to. And it sounds weird saying it. It sounds weird saying it, but I'm trying to keep it 100 right now, just being real. I'm just being real for myself personally, just like you said, if you know, it's not like this is what I'm attracted to. If I'm talking about marrying the person I want to be with for the rest of my life, I'm not saying that if I were to run across this, that, or the other person that I hit it off with, I'm just speaking from my own personal point of view. That's how I feel. And again, I think it comes down to those kind of, those political labels that we put on people. For instance, the minute she speaks out and says something that is against the grain, she's instantly labeled as a TERF or a feminazi or whatever the fuck she was saying in that thing. And it's like, well, I think there is a conversation to be had here that doesn't necessarily have to end with you calling J.K. Rowling a TERF. I think there's a real conversation here. And if that's her perspective, look, you can agree with it or disagree with it. I don't think she's a hateful person. And I don't think when people go out there and making all those memes like, oh, it turns out Harry Potter was written by no one, blah, 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 blah. It's like, dude, come on. Like, come on. She's a person with an opinion and she's speaking her truth. And that's what she believes. And she's not doing it in what I would consider to be a hateful way. And, you know, if you disagree with it, then have the discussion. Just have the discussion. If you think she's wrong, just fucking have that conversation. Doesn't mean that just because someone disagrees with you that they are a bad person. And that's what I feel like is what we fall into. And that mentality, that idea that anyone who disagrees with you must be a bad person on either side of the aisle. If I'm a conservative and you disagree with me, it's probably because you're a dumb, ignorant piece of shit. And if I'm a liberal and this conservative guy disagrees with me, it's probably because he's a racist, bigoted piece of shit. It's like, dude, once we bypass all that bullshit, then we can get to what we were talking about earlier, which is saying, look, this is what I think, this is what you think. I think we're all in agreement here that none of us are bad, terrible people for believing those things. So let's just try to get to the best solution. If I want to believe this and it's not harming you, cool. And if you want to believe that and it's not harming me, also cool. Also cool. So I'm just going to take a stance a little bit and just say, guys, come on. Just talk it out. It's Twitter. That's what it's for. That's what it's for. Talk it out. Talk it out. Have the conversation. I've never read Harry Potter, so this does not affect me. This does not affect me.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of don't care either. Because, I mean, it's not even like she's not like someone I look to like get news, or I want to hear her opinion on things. Like, she kind of got lucky and made a really good serialized like novel or whatever, which got, you know, had really good movies. I like the movies, I like the story, but like I don't know, I don't have to like her. And also, I've never had an opinion on her.
I've never had an opinion on J.K. Rowling until somebody told me to have an opinion on J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to have an opinion on J.K. Rowling because you're fucking telling me to. And I'm certainly not going to have the opinion that you want me to have on J.K. Rowling because you're fucking telling me to.